Oh, guys, I know that was a late response. Why does my brother leave his TV on? It is 2:18 p.m. August 14th, and I know I put a video up saying that I was sick and I had no voice, but for right now, I just got my voice back. I hope it stays. I am not going to do much experimenting on that, except to read this chapter to you guys. Now, I recorded it. It's still in my recordings on my phone, but for some reason it's not going up to the computer, and then so I now have to re-record it. It's gonna be fun. And I also can't delete that off my phone, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's just a glitch in my phone. I don't know, but this is actually the fourth time of me trying to record this chapter. And the third time it worked, but I couldn't get it on the computer. So, my brother's at work, my mom's at work, so I'm alone. Yeah, I'm still a little sick. Just so you guys know that. I've been having problems actually staying awake or even sleeping. Because when I'm tired and I finally go up to my room to go and get some rest, I can't even sleep in my own bed. It's struggling, so that's most likely why it's taking me so long to get better. Because I can't rest. And if you saw a picture of me now, you'd be like, oh wow, what are those bags? You have really deep bags under your eyes. Which is true. Because I don't get much sleep. It's like I didn't even leave school. And if I do get sleep, it's restless. I used to get some nights of non-restless sleep, but now it's just like every night is restless. Okay. So yeah. Well, I'm gonna get my fix of Shadowhunters. So I've been reading a lot. I read the Infernal Devices. I'm right now reading the whole shebang of Bane Chronicles. Yeah, that will be the book when I read it to you guys. I'll read the Bane Chronicles after the Mortal Instruments and then the Infernal Devices, because you're gonna want to know what happens to Magnus in his past. And that's because, well, because of the Mortal Instruments, you get curious. I'm not gonna tell you, or I might, just really fast. There we go. Magnus is banned from Peru. There. You never know why until, well, you never know why until you read that book. Because it's like, the first section in it is why Magnus is banned from what really happened in Peru. Something like that, and yeah. And you're gonna learn little about Magnus in this chapter. Not much, just that he put the block on Clary's mind. I know I'm speaking in, like, for those of you who have never actually read this, I'm speaking in gibberish. And then chapter 11, we're actually talking Chapter 11 and 12 are talking to Magnus. Yeah, we're talking to him, so yeah. Anyways, let's get on with chapter 10, City of Bones. Such a title drop, because literally, this is actually the only, this is the only book that has a title drop chapter. I understand why they named the chapter City of Bones, but honestly, I couldn't come up with anything better. And anyways, oh, that's right. This is the start of part 2 in the book. I gotta get the computer. Quick sec. So, you're gonna hear me speak horrible Latin. And since I don't know how to speak Latin or even read it, you're gonna have fun, and I need to do this, use Google Translate for my Latin. So, guys, yeah, I am getting better slowly, but it is not really that great. Wait, now I screwed up. Yeah, you're probably just gonna hear the keys. Okay, guys. I know this may be a bit boring for you, from what I am putting in here. It's just important because it's in Latin. And I'm gonna read the Latin one. But I am also going to tell you what it is. According to Google Chrome, well, according to Google Translate, what am I talking about? What it actually says in English. Oh, I screwed up. Okay, so Latin version first. Part 2, easy as the descent. Facilis descensus Averno, noctis ex das atri Iono, what? Ionuo, ditis zedrovacer, radum supervesc, Avadia ad horas hoc opus hic leba est. That's from Virgil the Aeneid. Yeah, as you can tell, I can't speak Latin anyway, and now the English version is the descent into hell. Night and day the door gloomy stands open. But to retrace your step and to come out to the upper air, this is the work, is the toil. Yeah, so that's what it's supposed to say according to Google Translate. Ugh, I don't know. But, yeah. Yeah, so that's what it says. it's, it's a little confusing at times, but yeah. Let's go back to the nice comfy chair, get out of this horrible chair. But yeah, I'm getting better. I do have a tickle down my throat, and so that can sometimes mean I'm gonna lose my voice further, but no. Let's go. So chapter 10, City of Bones. And we left chapter 9 with Hodge saying that Clary's mother, Jocelyn, was Valentine's wife. So, here's the shock of it with, Valentine and Jocelyn. Here's the shock of it. There was a moment of astonished silence before both Clary and Jace began speaking at once. Valentine had a wife? He was married? I thought, that's impossible. My mother would never. She was only ever married to my father. She didn't have an ex-husband. Hodge raised his hands wearily. Children. I'm not a child, Clary spun away. Clary spun away from the desk. And I don't want to hear any more. Clary, said Hodge, the kindness in his voice hurt. She turned slowly and looked at him across the room. She thought how odd it was that with his gray hair and scarred face, he looked so much older than her mother. And yet they had been young people together. Well, young people is in quotation marks. Had joined the circle together, had known Valentine together. My mother wouldn't. She began and trailed off. She was no longer sure how well she knew Jocelyn. Her mother had become a stranger to her, a liar, a hider of secrets. What wouldn't she have done? Your mother left the circle, said Hodge. He didn't move toward her, but watched her across the room with bird's-eyed stillness. Bird's-eyed stillness. Once we realized how extreme Valentine's views had become, once we knew what he was prepared to do, many of us left. Lucian was the first to leave. But that was for a specific reason. Pretty sure, I don't know if he would have followed still, but maybe. And you'll understand what I'm talking about. Though you probably already guessed, if you didn't know. Yes. That was a blow to Valentine. They had been very close. Yes, they had been paired that time. Spoilers, sorry. Hodge shook his head. Then Michael Wayland, your father, Jace. Jace raised his eyebrows but said nothing. There were those who stayed loyal. Pangborn, Blackwell, the Lightwoods. The Lightwoods? You mean Robert and Maurice? Jace looked thunderstruck. What about you? When did you leave? I didn't, said Hodge softly. Neither did they. We were afraid. Too afraid of what he might do. After the uprising, the loyalists like Blackwell and Pangborn fled. We stayed and cooperated with the Clave. Gave them names, helped them track down the ones who had run away. For that, we received clemency. Clemency? Jace's look was quick. But Hodge saw it. He said, You are thinking of the curse that binds me here, aren't you? You always assumed it was a vengeance spell cast by an angry demon or warlock. I let you think it, but it is not the truth. The curse that binds me was cast by the Clave. For being in the circle, Jace asked. his face a mask of astonishment for not leaving it before the uprising. Yeah. You'll realize that the clave seems to sound mean. It's a whole manner of things, but clave does sound mean in ways. But the Lightwoods weren't punished, Clarice said. Why not? They'd done the same thing you'd done. There were extenuating circumstances in their case. They were married, they had a child, although it is not as if they reside in this outpost far from home by their own choice. We were banished here, the three of us. The four of us, I should say. Alec was a squalling baby when we left this... when we left the... Oh, no. Yeah? Okay, voice is back. Ugh. Alec was a squalling baby when we left the Glass City. They can return to Idris on official business only. And then only for short times. I can never return. I will never see the Glass City again. Jace stared. It was as if he were looking at his tutor with new eyes. Larry thought, though it wasn't Jace who had changed. He said, the law is hard, but it is the law. That's the saying of basically Shadowhunters. I taught you that, said Hodge, dry amusement in his voice. And now you turn my lessons back at me. Rightly, too. He looked as if he wanted to sink down into a nearby chair, but held himself upright nevertheless. In his rigid posture there was something of the soldier he had once been. Clary thought. Guys. Oh my god. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this 2 hours of recording, I hope. It's only been like 17 and a half minutes. And I've already lost my voice once. A little bit. Not much. Well, let's keep going. Why didn't you tell me before, she said, that my mother was married to Valentine? You knew her name. I knew her as Jocelyn Fairchild, not Jocelyn Frey, said Hodge. And you were so insistent on her ignorance of the shadow world, you convinced me it could not be the Jocelyn I knew. And perhaps I did not want to believe it. No one would wish for Valentine's return. He shook his head. He shook his head again. When I sent for the Brothers of the Bone City this morning, I had no idea just what news we would have for them, he said. When the clay finds out Valentine may have returned, that he is seeking the cup, there will be an uproar. I can only hope it does not disturb. I can only hope it does not disrupt the accords. I bet Valentine would like that, Jace said. But why does he want the cup so badly? Why, indeed. It should be obvious, though. Hodge's face was gray. Isn't that obvious, he said. So he can build himself an army. Jace looked startled, but that would never... Dinner time! It was Isabel standing framed in the door of the library. She still had the spoon in her hand, though her hair had escaped from its bun and was straggling down her neck. Sorry if I'm interrupting, she added as an afterthought. Dear God, said Jace, the dread hour is nigh. I'm sorry. I will laugh, I don't know if I said this yet, but I will laugh in these books, because I like the humor that's used. Mainly by Jace. The dread hour is nigh. Hodge looked alarmed. I had a very filling breakfast, he stammered. I mean lunch. Filling lunch. I couldn't possibly eat. I threw out the soup, Isabel said. Yeah, everyone hates Isabel's cooking. and ordered Chinese food from that place downtown. Jace unhitched himself from the desk and stretched. Great, I'm starved. Yeah. I might be able to eat a bite, maybe Hodge meekly. You two are terrible liars, said Isabel darkly. Look, I know you don't like my cooking, so stop doing it, Jace advised her reasonably. Did you order mushu pork? You know I love mushu pork. Isabel cast her eyes skyward. Yes, it's in the kitchen. Awesome! Jace ducked by her with an affectionate ruffle of her hair. Hodge went after him, pausing only to pat Isabel on the shoulder when he was gone. With a funny apologetic duck of his head. Had Clary really only a few minutes before been able to see the ghost in him of his old warrior self? Isabel was looking after Jason Hodge, twisting the spoon in her scarred, pale fingers. Clary said, Is he really? Isabel didn't look at her. Is who really what? Jace, is he really a terrible liar? Now Isabel did turn her eyes on Clary, and they were large and dark. No, large, what? And they were large and dark and unexpectedly thoughtful. He's not a liar at all. He's not a liar at all. Not about important things. He'll tell you horrible truths, but he won't lie. She paused before she added quickly. Quietly, I mean. That's why it's generally better not to ask him anything unless you know you can stand to hear the answer. Yeah? It's basically Jace. The kitchen was warm and full of light and the salt-sweet smell of takeout Chinese food. The smell reminded Clary of home. She sat and looked at her glistening plate of noodles, toyed with her fork and tried not to look at Simon, who was staring at Isabel with an expression more glazed than a General Tso's duckling. Well, I think it's kind of romantic, said Isabel, sucking tapioca pearls through an enormous pink straw. What is? Asked Simon, instantly alert. The whole business about Clary's mother being married to Valentine, said Isabel. Jace and Hodge had filled her in, though Clary noted that both of them had left out the part about the Lightwoods having been in the circle, and the curses the Clary had handed down. So now he's back from the dead, and he's come looking for her. Maybe he wants to get back together. I kind of doubt he sent a ravener demon to her house because he wants to get back together, said Alec, who had turned up when the food was served. Nobody had asked him where he'd been, and he hadn't offered the information. He was sitting next to Jace across from Clary and was avoiding looking at her. It wouldn't be my move, Jace agreed. First the candy and flowers, then the apology letters, then the ravenous demon hordes, in that order. I'd say no ravenous demon hordes. That's just my opinion. He might have sent her candy and flowers, Isabel said. We don't know. Isabel, said Hodge patiently. This is the man who rained down destruction on Idris, the like of which it had never seen, who set Shadowhunter against Downworlder and made the streets of the Glass City run with blood. That's sort of hot, Isabel argued. That evil thing? Simon tried to look menacing, but gave it up when he saw Clary staring at him. So why does Valentine want this cup so bad, and why does he think Claire's mom has it, he said. He asked. God damn it. You said it was so he could make an army, Clary said, turning to Hodge. You mean because he can use the cup to make shadow hunters? Yes. So Valentine could just walk up to any guy on the street and make a shadow hunter out of him. Just with the cup, Simon leaned forward. Would it work on me? We'll find out. Later. later. Hodge gave him a look. Ugh. Hodge gave him a long and measured look. Possibly, he said, but the reason that only a few mundanes are ever chosen to ascend and become Nephilim is that most would never survive the transition. It takes special strength and resilience before they can be turned. They must be extensively trained and tested, but Valentine would never bother with that. He would use the cup on any human he could capture, and cull out the 20% who survived to be his army. An army he could use to attack the Clave. Alec was looking at Hodge with the same horror Clary felt. How do you know he'd do that? Because, Hodge said, when he was in the circle, that was his plan. He said it was the only way to build the kind of force that was needed to defend our world. Yeah. God. But that's murder, said Isabel, who looked a little green. Okay, now my voice is starting to go. But that's murder, said Isabel, who looked a little green. He said that we had made the world safe for humans for 1,000 years, said Hodge. And now is their time to repay us with their own sacrifice. Their lives? Demanded Jace, his cheeks flushed. That goes against everything we're supposed to be about. Protecting the helpless, safeguarding humanity. Hodge pushed his plate away. Valentine was insane, he said. Brilliant, but insane. He cared about nothing but killing demons and downworlders. Nothing about making the world pure. He would have sacrificed his own son for the cause and could not understand how anyone else could not. Would not, I mean. He had a son, said Alec. I was speaking figuratively, said Hodge. Reaching for his handkerchief, he used it to mop his forehead before returning it to his pocket. His hand, Clary saw, was trembling slightly. When his Okay, that's better. Sorry for all the coughing and stuff, but like I said, I'm still a little sick, but I'm trying to get this recorded so I can put it out. I have the cover photo done, so I just need to put the cover photo, put this on the computer, put the cover photo there, and then the music, and then render, upload. This is like the easiest videos of mine to make, so. I was speaking figuratively, said Hodge, reaching for his handkerchief. I'm okay. I just dropped the book for a moment. Okay. And I lost my page. Wait, guys. Okay, here we go. I was speaking figuratively, said Hodge, reaching for his handkerchief. He used it to mop his forehead before returning it to his pocket. His hand, Clary saw, was trembling slightly. When his land burned, when his home was destroyed, it was assumed that he had burned himself and the cup to ashes rather than relinquish either to the Clave. His bones were found in the ashes along with the bones of his wife. But my mother lives, said Clary. She didn't die in that fire. And neither, it seems now, did Valentine, said Hodge. The Clave will not be pleased to have been fooled, but more importantly, they will want to secure the cup. And more importantly than that, they will want to make sure Valentine does not. Yeah, Valentine's a serious threat. It seems to me that the first thing we'd better do is find Clary's mother, said Jace. Find her, find the cup. get it before Valentine does. That sounded fine to Clary, but Hodge looked at Jace as if he'd proposed juggling nitroglycerin as a solution. Absolutely not. Then what do we do? Nothing, Hodge said. All this is best left to skilled, experienced shadow hunters. I am skilled, protested Jace with a wave of his hand. A silver ring glittered on one slim finger. A ring Clary didn't recall him wearing before. I am experienced. Hodge's tone was firm, nearly parental. I know that you are, but you're still a child, or nearly one. Yet, guys, in Shadowhunter culture, you're considered a child until you're 18. Once you turn 18, you're an adult. But while you're like 16, 17, you're just waiting and waiting. There's no such thing as a teenager. Jace looked at Hodge through slitted eyes. His lashes were long, casting shadows down over his angular cheekbones. In someone else, it would have been a shy look, even an apologetic one. But on Jace, it looked narrow and menacing. I am not a child. Hodge is right, said Alec. He was looking at Jace, and Clary thought he must be one of the few people in the world who looked at Jace not as if he were afraid of him, but as if he were afraid for him. Valentine is dangerous. I know you're a good shadow hunter. You're probably the best our age, but Valentine was one of the best there ever was. It took a huge battle to bring him down. And he didn't exactly stay down, said Isabel, examining her forked tines. Apparently. But we're here, said Jace. We're here, and because of the Accords, nobody else is. If we don't do something... We are going to do something, said Hodge. I'll send the Clave a message tonight. They could have a force of Nephilim here by tomorrow if they wanted. They'll take care of this. You have done more than enough. Jace subsided, but his eyes were still glittering. I don't like it. You don't have to like it, said Alec. You just have to shut up and not do anything stupid. Have you met Jace? I know you have, Alec, but still. But what about my mother? Clary demanded. She can't wait for some representative from the Clave to show up. Valentine has her right now. Pangborn Blackwell said so. And he could be... She couldn't bring herself to say the word torture. But Clary knew she wasn't the only one thinking it. Suddenly no one at the table could meet her eyes. Except Simon. Hurting her, he said, finishing her sentence. Except Clary, they also said she was unconscious, and that Valentine wasn't happy about it. He seems to be waiting for her to wake up. I'd stay unconscious if I were her, Isabel muttered. But that could be any time, said Clary, ignoring Isabel. I thought the Clave was pledged to protect people. Shouldn't there be shadow hunters here right now? Shouldn't they already be searching for her? That would be easier, snapped Alec, if we had the slightest idea where to look. But we do, said Jace. You do? Clary looked at him, startled and eager. Yeah, she's eager. Where? Here, Jace leaned forward and touched his fingers to the side of her temple, so gently that a flush crept up her face. Everything we need to know is locked up in your head, under those pretty red curls. Clary reached up to touch her hair protectively. I don't think... So what are you going to do? Simon asked sharply. Cut her head open to get at it? Jace's eyes sparked, but he said calmly, Not at all. The Silent Brothers can help her retrieve her memories. You hate the Silent Brothers, protested Isabel. I don't hate them, said Jace candidly. I'm afraid of them. It's not the same thing. No, but it's actually quite a big thing when Jace admits that he's afraid of something. I thought you said they were librarians, said Clary. They are librarians, Salmon whistled. Those must be some killer late fees. The Silent Brothers are archivists, but that is not all they are. That is not all they are, interrupted Hodge, sounding as if he were running out of patience. Maybe. In order to strengthen their minds, they have chosen to take upon themselves some of the most powerful runes ever created. The power of these runes is so great that the use of them... He broke off and Clary heard Alec's voice in her head saying, they mutilate themselves. Well, it warps and twists their physical forms. They are not warriors in the sense that other shadow hunters are warriors. Their powers are of the mind, not the body. They can read minds, Clary said in a small voice. Among other things, they are among the most feared of all demon hunters. I don't know, said Simon. It doesn't sound so bad to me. I'd rather have someone mess around inside my head than chop it off. Well, yeah, okay. You'll understand why I'm just like, Simon, no. Because the Silent Brothers actually make me fear them. I am afraid of the Silent Brothers, and they're not real. Then you're a bigger idiot than you look, said Jace, regarding him with scorn. Jace is right, Isabel said, ignoring Simon. The Silent Brothers are really creepy. Hodge's hand was clenched on the table. They are very powerful, he said. They walk in darkness and do not speak, but they can crack open a man's mind the way you might crack open a walnut, and leave him screaming alone in the dark if that is what they desire. Exactly. Clary looked at Jace appalled. Do you want to give me to them? I want them to help you. Jace leaned across the table so close you could see the dark amber flecks of his eyes. Of his light eyes. Sorry, guys. Of his light eyes. Maybe we don't get to look for the cup, he said softly. Maybe the clave will do that. But what's in your mind belongs to you. Someone's hidden secrets there, secrets you can't see. Don't you want to know the truth about your own life? I don't want someone else inside my head, she said weakly. She knew he was right, but the idea of turning herself over to beings that even the shadow hunters thought were creepy sent a chill through her blood. I'll go with you, said Jace. I'll stay with you while they do it. That's enough, Simon said. That's enough. Simon had stood up from the table, red with anger. Leave her alone. Alec glanced over at Simon as if he'd just noticed him, raking tumbled black hair out of his eyes and blinking. What are you still doing here, Mundane? Simon ignored him. I said leave her alone. Jace glanced over at him, a slow, sweetly poisonous glance. Alec is right, he said. The Institute is sworn to shelter shadow hunters, not their mundane friends, especially when they've worn out their welcome. Isabel got up and took Simon's arm. I'll show him out. For a moment it looked like he might resist her, but he caught Clary's eye across the table as she shook her head slightly. He subsided. Head up, he let Isabel lead him from the room. Clary stood up. I'm tired, she said. I want to go to sleep. You've hardly eaten anything, Jace protested. She brushed aside his reaching hand. I'm not hungry. It was cooler in the hallway than it had been in the kitchen. Clary leaned against the wall, pulling at her shirt. which was sticky with the cold sweat on her chest. Far down the hall she could see Isabel's and Simon's retreating figures, swallowed up by shadows. She watched them go silently, a shivery, odd feeling growing in the pit of her stomach. When had Simon become Isabel's responsibility instead of hers? If there was one thing she was learning from all this, it was how easy it was to lose everything you had always thought you'd have forever. Okay, I'm just gonna pause the recording here. I'm gonna get back to it shortly. I've just gotta go get a drink. So I'll be back in a few moments. It will probably be not even that long because I'm just pausing the recording. It doesn't stop. So I'll be back. Okay, everyone, I'm back. We are going to continue with chapter 10. So, yeah, it hasn't been that long, maybe like 2-3 minutes. So let's continue. Now we're in dream world. We're in Claire's dream, so the first really detailed dream we ever really read. So yeah, let's continue. The room was all gold and white with high walls that gleamed like enamel, and a roof high above, clear and glittering like diamonds. Clary wore a green velvet dress and carried a gold fan in her hand. Her hair twisted into a knot that spilled curls, made her head feel strangely heavy every time she turned to look behind her. "You see someone more interesting than me?" Simon asked Simon. In the dream, he was mysteriously an expert dancer. He steered her through the crowd as if she were a leaf caught in a river current. He was wearing all black like a shadow hunter, and it showed his coloring to good advantage. Dark hair, lightly brown skin, white teeth. He's handsome, Clary thought, with a jolt of surprise. "There's no one more interesting than you," Clary said. "It's just this place. I've never seen anything like it." She turned again as they passed a champagne fountain, an enormous silver dish, the centerpiece, a mermaid with a jar pouring sparkling wine down her bare back. People were filling their glasses from the dish, laughing and talking. The mermaid turned her head as Clary passed and smiled. The smile showed white teeth as sharp as a vampire's. "Welcome to the Glass City," said a voice that wasn't Simon's. Clary found that Simon had disappeared, and she was now dancing with Chase, who was wearing white. The material of his shirt a thin cotton. She could see the black marks through it. There was a bronze chain around his throat, and his hair and eyes looked more gold than ever. She thought about how she would like to paint his portrait with the dull gold paint one sometimes saw in Russian icons. "Where's Simon?" she asked as they spun again around the champagne fountain. Clary saw Isabel there with Alec, both of them in royal blue. They were holding hands like Hansel and Gretel in the dark forest. "This place is for the living," said Jace. His hands were cool on hers, and she was aware of them in a way she had not been of Simon's. She narrowed her eyes at him. "What do you mean?" He leaned close. She could feel his lips against her ear. They were not cool at all. "Wake up, Clary," he whispered. "Wake up! Wake up!" She bolted upright in bed, gasping, hair plastered to her neck with cold sweat. Her wrists were held in a hard grip. She tried to pull away, then realized he was restraining her. "Jace?" Yeah, he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. How had she gotten into a bed? Looking tousled and half awake with early morning hair and sleepy eyes. Let go of me. Sorry, his fingers slipped from her wrist. You tried to hit me the second I said your name. Yeah. I'm a little jumpy, I guess. She glanced around. She was in a small bedroom furnished in dark wood. By the quality of the faint light coming in through the half-open window, she guessed it was dawn, or just after. Her backpack was propped against one wall. How did I get here? I don't remember. I found you asleep on the floor in the hallway. Jace sounded amused. And when does he not sound amused, though? Like in the first book, he hardly ever sounds not amused. Or he's hardly ever joking. Not joking, I mean. Hodge helped me get you into bed. Thought you'd be more comfortable in the guest room than in the infirmary. Wow, I don't remember anything. She ran her hands through her hair, pushing draggle curls out of her eyes. What time is it anyway? About 5. In the morning? She glared at him. You better have a good reason for waking me up. Truth be told, you guys, when I have school, I wake up 4 in the morning. So 5 is like, oh my god, it's lovely. I sleep for an extra hour. I go to bed at like 10:30 or 11, wake up at 4. Yeah, I don't get much sleep. Ever. Which sometimes is not a good thing. I fall asleep in class a lot. I fell asleep in math class a lot. Science class. On the last day of school, I actually fell asleep in English. I slept through the entire class. We were watching a black and white movie. I think it was To Kill a Mockingbird. We were watching that. And as I was watching, I dozed off. And then my friend that sat beside me, she's noticed, and so did other people, and everyone was apparently bugging her to wake me up. And then she didn't want to because I looked so peaceful. Yeah. And considering my face was pointing towards the TV, I don't know if my teacher, which was actually to my right, she was sitting in a desk, and she was to like my right. She didn't even notice I fell asleep, I don't think. Until I told her. Yeah, I'm like a teacher's pet. Don't bug me. Okay, let's continue with this. Why? Were you having a good dream? She could still hear music in her ears, feel the heavy jewels brushing her cheeks. I don't remember. I don't remember my dreams, guys. Either I don't dream, or I do and I just never remember. Though I'm gonna tell you guys a little story. I'm gonna tell you guys a small little story within this story. But it's been my own life. Just so you guys know, I have what you would call a psychic wall that I've built around me to protect me. It protects me from getting hurt, but I do have low self-esteem. Why do I even have a YouTube channel if I have low self-esteem, you ask? Because it's just for fun, and if I get haters, I don't care. I don't care. I know I'm bad. I know I suck and stuff. Oh. But again, it's really difficult. I really hope when I add the music you cannot hear my brother's TV. Well, anyways, so like week and a half ago, well, a week and a half ago, brother said some things, and he hurt me further, and like physically hurt me further, and he said some things. He actually said, go die in a hole, go rot in hell, go, like, that sort of thing I was used to. I am used to that. But, well, the pain got a bit further, because I don't know how. I started feeling, I felt it more than I usually do. But my psychic wall broke down. It shattered, and then tears were spilling down my face, and I don't usually cry. So these tears were from years of holding them back, years of not crying, so you can imagine the whole meltdown I had. He could see the fear in my eyes, the fear I don't normally show. He could see the pain, and it just gets him off for some reason. But you could see the pain. And then my mom had him. Well, my mom didn't really have him leave. She kind of like, before then he was gonna leave, so he didn't have much time to continue on with the torturing of me. But yeah, so my psychic wall broke down. I had about an hour to try and build it back up. I have it built back up a little, but it's not as strong as I used to have it, so yeah. But now my brother just calls me a crybaby. Which, I have a question for you guys. Would you call someone a crybaby if well, he didn't really know about the psychic wall, but still. Would you really call someone a crybaby if you were actually physically hurting them and then they started crying? It's also mental. Like, he hurts me constantly, and I just don't say anything usually. I vent out sometimes, and I do post on Brony Square sometimes when it happens, but I don't really complain all that much. But since I put that wall up, when I first put that wall up, I stopped remembering or even seeing dreams in my sleep. When it all of a sudden came down a week and a half ago, I couldn't build it up. I couldn't build it up within an hour, so I went to bed later that night. I was slowly getting my dreams back. I was slowly dreaming and remembering the dreams. I was slowly getting them back. At first it was just audio that I could hear in my dreams. And my wall had, and I didn't get to the whole visual and audio, but I did have visuals at one point, no audio. And that was around the time where I was able to build the wall back up. And so when I built that wall back up, it all just, I can't remember any dreams, and I know it's weak and it's difficult, but I don't want it to shatter. It's my protective barrier. It protects every feeling I have. Sorry guys for that little depressing thing. I'm depressing sometimes. My friends think I'm too perky. Do you think I'm too perky? Tell me if you think I'm too perky. Please tell me. I feel like I should know if I'm too perky. Yeah, anyways, so, yeah, that wall came down a week and a half ago. Just about this week I've been able to build it back up. It was difficult for me to build it back up. If it breaks down again, which it most likely will because it's very weak, I don't know if I will be able to build it back up. But, yeah. Sorry for the depressing little spill into my life, but that sort of thing happens with me. So yeah. I'm sorry for that. I feel bad for telling you guys. I feel so bad. At least not all of you watch these. At least not all of my subscribers watch these. I'm still getting 19 subscribers right now. So far. But yeah. So let's continue, I guess. Where was I? Okay. He stood up. One of the Silent Brothers is here to see you. Hodge sent me to wake you up. Actually, he offered to wake you up himself, but since it's 5 a.m., I figured you'd be less cranky if you had something nice to look at. Meaning you. What else? Oh, Jace. You're so full of yourself. I didn't agree to this, you know, she snapped. This Silent Brother thing? Do you want to find your mother, he said, or not? She stared at him. You just have to meet Brother Jeremiah, that's all. You might even like him. He's got a great sense of humor for a guy who never says anything. She put her head in her hands. Get out so I can change. She swung her legs out of bed the moment the door shut behind him. Though it was barely dawn, humid heat was already beginning to gather in the room. She pushed the window shut and went into the bathroom to wash her face and rinse her mouth, which tasted like old paper. Well, that's wonderful. 5 minutes later, she was sliding her feet into her green sneakers. She changed into cutoffs and a plain black t-shirt. If only her thin, freckled legs looked more like Isabel's lanky, smooth limbs. But it couldn't be helped. She pulled her hair back into a ponytail and went to join Jace in the hallway. Church was there with him, muttering and circling restlessly. What's with the cat? Clary asked. Silent Brothers make him nervous. Sounds like they make everyone nervous. Jace smiled thinly. Church meowed as they set off down the hall, but didn't follow them. At least the thick stones of the cathedral walls still held some of the night's chill. The corridors were dark and cool. When they reached the library, Clary was surprised to see that the lamps were off. The library was lit only by the milky glow Okay, so I lost my place for a second there, guys. By the milky glow that filtered down through the high windows, set into the vaulted roof, Hodge sat behind the enormous desk in a suit, his gray streaked hair silvered by the dawn light. For a moment she thought he was alone in the room, that Jace had been playing a joke on her. Then she saw a figure move out of the dimness, and she realized that what she had thought was a patch of darker shadow was a man, a tall man, in a heavy robe that fell from neck to foot, covering him completely. The hood of the robe was raised, hiding his face. The robe itself was the color of parchment, and the intricate runic designs along the hem and sleeves looked as if they had been inked there in drying blood. The hair rose along Clary's arms and on the back of her neck, prickling almost painfully. "This," said Hodge, "is Brother Jeremiah of the Silent City." The man came toward them, his heavy cloak swirling as he moved, and Clary realized what it was about him that was strange. He made no sound at all as he walked, not the slightest footstep. Even his cloak, which should have rustled, was silent. Stupid crows! Yes, I'm yelling at crows. So yelling at me. If you can hear the crows, they're just not being nice to me. I gotta try and tune out those crows. She would almost have wondered if he were a ghost. But no, she thought as she halted in front of them. No, as he halted. But no, she thought as he halted in front of them. There was a strange, sweet smell about him, like incense and blood. The smell of something living. "And this, Jeremiah," Hodge said, rising from his desk, "is the girl I wrote to you about, Clarissa Frey." The hooded face turned slowly toward her. Clary felt cold to her fingertips. "Hello," she said. There was no reply. "I decided you were right," said Jace. "I was right?" Jace said. "I usually am." Again, Jace, you're so full of yourself. Hodge ignored this. "I sent a letter to the Clave about all this last night. But Clary's memories are her own. Only she can decide how she wants to deal with the contents of her own head. If she wants to help the Silent Brothers, she should have that choice." Clary said nothing. Dorothea had said there was a block in her mind, hiding something. Of course she wanted to know what it was, but the shadowy figure of the Silent Brother was so, well, silent. Silence itself seemed to flow from him like a dark tide, black and thick as ink. It chilled her bones. Brother Jeremiah's face was still turned toward her, nothing but darkness visible underneath his hood. "This is Justin's daughter?" Clary gave a little gasp, stepping back. The words had echoed inside her head as if she'd thought them herself, but she hadn't. "Yes," said Hodge, and added quickly, "but her father was a mundane." "That does not matter," said Jeremiah. "The blood of the Clave is dominant." "Why did you call my mother Jocelyn?" said Clary, searching in vain for some sign of a face beneath the hood. "Did you know her?" The brothers keep records on all members of the Clave," explained Hodge. "Exhaustive records." Not that exhaustive," said Jace. "If they didn't even know she was still alive." Okay, just, I know I already read part of the Silent Brothers, but when the Silent Brothers are talking, I'm gonna just use a whisper, so you can identify that it's Silent Brothers speaking, and not just like a thought. It is likely she had the assistance of a warlock in her disappearance. Most shadow hunters cannot so easily escape the clave. There was no emotion in Jeremiah's voice. He sounded neither approving nor disapproving of Jocelyn's actions. There's something I don't understand, Clary said. Why would Valentine think my mom had the mortal cup? If she went through so much trouble to disappear, like you said, then why would she bring it with her? To keep him from getting his hands on it, said Hodge. She above all people would have known what would happen if Valentine had the cup. And I imagine she didn't trust the clave to hold on to it. Not after Valentine got it away from them in the first place. I guess Clary couldn't keep the doubt from her voice. The whole thing seemed so unlikely. She tried to picture her mother fleeing under cover of darkness, with a big gold cup stashed in the pocket of her overalls, and failed. Well, she wouldn't be wearing overalls. She'd either be wearing normal clothes that aren't overalls, or shadow hunter gear. Jocelyn turned against her husband when she found out what he intended to do with the cup, said Hodge. It's not unreasonable to assume she would do everything in her power to keep the cup from falling into his hands. The clave themselves would have looked to her if. Okay, I already messed up on this friggin' sentence twice. Let's try and make sure I don't screw up on it again. God damn it. Refreshing water. The clave themselves would have looked first to her if they thought she was still alive. It seems to me, Clary said with an edge to her voice, that no one the clave thinks is dead is ever actually dead. Maybe they should invest in dental records. My father's dead, said Jace, the same edge in his voice. I don't need dental records to tell me that. Oh, God. Ugh. But the whole fact that the irony of that is, guy Jace thought was his father isn't actually dead. Maybe. I'm spoiling you guys on that. God damn it. But Jace's real biological father is dead. Yeah. Yep. I do that all. Oh, I got hair in my mouth. No. Use my own hair like falling out. Anyways, let's continue. Clary turned on him in some exasperation. Look, I didn't mean... That is enough, interrupted Brother Jeremiah. There is truth to be learned here, if you are patient enough to listen to it. With a quick gesture, he raised his hands and drew the hood back from his face. Forgetting Jace, Clary fought the urge to cry out. The archivist's head was bald, smooth and white as an egg, darkly indented where his eyes had once been. They were gone now. His lips were crisscrossed with a pattern of dark lines that resembled surgical stitches. He understood now that Alec had meant... She understood now what Alec had meant by mutilation. The brothers of the Silent City do not lie, said Jeremiah. If you want the truth from me, you shall have it, but I shall ask of you the same in return. Clary lifted her chin. I'm not a liar either. The mind cannot lie. Jeremiah moved toward her. It is your memories I want. Just that line. It is your memories I want. That. The smell of blood and ink was stifling. Clary felt a wave of panic. Wait. Clary, it was Hodge, his tone gentle. It's entirely possible that there are memories you have buried or repressed, memories formed when you were too young to have a conscious recollection of them, that Brother Jeremiah can reach. It could help us a great deal. She said nothing, biting the inside of her lip. She hated the idea of someone reaching inside her head, touching memories so private and hidden that even she couldn't reach them. She doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to, Jace said suddenly. Does she? Clary interrupted Hodge before he could reply. It's all right. I'll do it. Brother Jeremiah nodded curtly and moved toward her with the soundlessness that sent chills up her spine. Will it hurt? She whispered. He didn't reply, but his narrow white hands came up to touch her face. The skin of his fingers was thin as parchment. Was thin as parchment paper. Inked all over with runes. She could feel the power in them, jumping like static electricity to sting her skin. She closed her eyes, but not before she saw the anxious expression that crossed Hodge's face. Color swirled up against the darkness behind her eyelids. She felt a pressure, drawing, pulling her head and hands and feet. She clenched her hands, straining against the weight, the blackness. She felt as if she were pressed up against something hard and unyielding. Being slowly crushed, she heard herself gasp and went suddenly cold all over. Cold as winter. In a flash she saw an icy street, gray buildings looming overhead, an explosion of whiteness stinging her face in freezing particles. That's enough! Jace's voice cut through the winter's chill. The winter chill! And the falling snow vanished, a shower of white sparks. Clary's eyes sprang open. Slowly the library came back into focus, the book-lined walls, the anxious faces of Hodge and Jace. Brother Jeremiah stood unmoving, a carved idol of ivory and red ink. Clary became aware of the sharp pains in her hands, and glanced down to see red lines scored across her skin where her nails had dug in. Jace, Hodge said reprovingly. Look at her hands. Jace gestured toward Clary, who curled her fingers in to cover her injured palms. Hodge put a broad hand on her shoulder. Are you all right? Slowly she moved her head in a nod. The crushing weight had gone, but she could feel the sweat that drenched her hair, pasted her shirt to her back like sticky tape. There's a block in your mind, said Brother Jeremiah. Your memories cannot be reached. A block, said Jace. You mean she's repressed her memories? No, I mean they have been blocked from her conscious mind by a spell. I cannot break it here. She will have to come to the Bone City and stand before the Brotherhood. A spell? Said Clary incredulously. Who would have put a spell on me? Nobody answered her. Jace looked at his tutor. He was surprisingly pale. Clary thought, considering that this had been his idea. Hodge, she shouldn't have to go if she doesn't. It's all right. Clary took a deep breath. Her palms ached where her nails had cut them, and she wanted badly to lie down somewhere dark and rest. I'll go. I want to know the truth. I want to know what's in my head. Jace nodded once. Fine. Then I'll go with you. Clary. Jace. I ship Clays, guys. You should all. I like shipping Clary and. I ship Clary and Jace, obviously. And obviously the series does too, but still. It's amazing. And he cares about her. Okay. Oh, God. We are on page 169. We have to make it to page 188. God damn it, guys. Okay, how long have I been recording? An hour and 15.5 minutes. God damn it. I said it is a long chapter. Guys. Let's continue. Leaving the institute was like climbing into a wet, hot canvas bag. Humid air pressed down on the city, turning the air to grimy soup. I don't see why we have to leave separately from Brother Jeremiah, Clary grumbled. They were standing on the corner outside the institute. The streets were deserted except for a garbage truck trundling slowly down the block. What? Is he embarrassed to be seeing the shadow hunters or something? The Brotherhood are shadow hunters, Jace pointed out. Somehow he managed to look cool despite the heat. It made Clary want to smack him. Yes. I suppose he went to get his car, she inquired sarcastically. Jace grinned. Something like that. You know, something like that. She shook her head. You know, I'd feel a lot better about this if Hodge had come with us. What? I'm not protection enough for you? It's not protection I need right now. It's someone who can help me think. She suddenly reminded. She clapped a hand over her mouth. Oh, Simon! No, I'm Jace, said Jace patiently. Simon is the weaselly little one with the bad haircut and dismal fashion sense. Oh, shut up, she replied, but it was more automatic than heartfelt. I meant to call him before I went to sleep to see if he got home okay. Shaking his head, Jace regarded the heavens as if they were about to open up and reveal the secrets of the universe. With everything that's going on, you're worried about Weaselface? Weaselface. I forgot about that nickname. Because in this book series, you will understand why. He is basically called Rat Boy later on. And the irony of what Jace is gonna say soon is just that. Don't call him that. He doesn't look like a weasel. You may be right, said Jace. I've met an attractive weasel or two in my time. He looks more like a rat. And Magnus. Yes, I'm spoiling you on some stuff. Magnus calls him Rat Boy. Rat Boy. Rat Boy. He does not. He's probably at home lying in a puddle of his own drool. Just wait till Isabel gets bored with him and you have to pick up the pieces. Is Isabel likely to get bored with him? Clary asked. Jace thought about this. Yes, he said. Clary wondered if perhaps Isabel was smarter than Jace gave her credit for. Maybe she would realize what an amazing guy Simon was. How funny, how smart, how cool. Maybe they'd start dating. The idea filled her with a nameless horror. That nameless horror. I would say it might be jealousy, but I also wouldn't. I wouldn't say it's jealousy because Clary loves Simon as if he were her brother. But I would say it's jealousy because I honestly don't know. It might just be like just plain horror. like, she's scared that Simon will, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just hit myself on the head with my book. Okay. Let's get on with this. Where's the name of this horse? There it is. Lost in thought, it took her several moments to realize that Jace had been saying something to her. When she blinked at him, she saw a wide grin spread across his face. What? She said. What? She asked ungraciously. I wish he'd stop desperately trying to get my attention like this, he said. It's become embarrassing. Oh my god. Sarcasm is the last refuge of the imaginatively bankrupt, she told him. I can't help it. It's my rapier wit I use my rapier wit to hide my inner pain. Yes, and we do see that later. Your pain will be utter soon if you don't get out of traffic. Are you trying to get run over by a cab? Don't be ridiculous, he said. We could never get a cab that easily in this neighborhood. Well, I don't know what neighborhood that is. As if on cue, a narrow black car with tinted windows rumbled up to the curb and paused in front of Jace, engine purring. It was long and sleek and low to the ground, like a limousine. The windows curved outward. Jace looked at her sideways. There was an amusement in his glance, but also a certain urgency. She glanced at the car again, letting her gaze relax, letting the strength of what was real pierce the veil of the glamour. Now the car looked like Cinderella's carriage, except instead of pink and gold and blue like an Easter egg, it was black as velvet. Its windows darkly tinted, the wheels were black, the leather trimmings all black. On the black metal driver's bench sat Brother Jeremiah, holding a set of reins in his gloved hands. His face was hidden beneath the cowl of his parchment-colored robe. On the other end of the street of the reins were two horses, black as smoke, snarling and pawing at the sky. Get in, said Jace, when she continued to stand there, gaping. He took her arm and half pushed her in through the open door of the carriage. Swinging himself up after her, the carriage began to move before he had closed the door behind them. He fell back in his seat, plush and glossily upholstered, and looked over at her. A personal escort to the Bone City is nothing to turn your nose up at. I wasn't turning my nose up. I was just surprised. I wasn't expecting... I thought it was a car. Just relax, said Jace. Enjoy that new carriage smell. Yes, always enjoy a new carriage smell. It's not something anyone ever says these days. Because you don't see carriages these days. At least in my city, you don't. If anyone... There's no carriage rides either. Literally, the closest thing they have is actual horseback riding, and that's out in the country. Or on at a camp. Which is out of the city. Out in the country. Of this beautiful country of mine. Yes, in this beautiful Canada. Douches. Yeah, I've ridden a horse a few times. I spent 2 hours on the back of a horse once. Yeah. Wasn't really much to it. But yeah. Okay. Claire rolled her eyes and turned to look at the windows. She would have thought that a horse and carriage wouldn't have stood a chance in Manhattan traffic. But they were moving downtown easily, their soundless progression unnoticed by the snarl of taxis, buses, and SUVs that choked the avenue. In front of them, a yellow cab switched lanes, cutting off their forward progress. Clary tensed, worried about the horses. Then the carriage lurched upward as the horses sprang lightly to the top of the cab. She choked off a gasp. The carriage, rather than dragging along the ground, sailed up behind the horses, rolling lightly and soundlessly up and over the cab's roof and down the other side. Clary glanced backward as the carriage hit the pavement again with a jolt. The cab driver was smoking and staring ahead, utterly oblivious. I always thought cab drivers didn't pay attention to traffic, but this is ridiculous, she said weakly. Just because you can see through glamour now, Jace let the end of the sentence hang delicately in the air between them. I can only see through it when I concentrate, she said. It hurts my head a little. I bet that's because of the block in your mind. The brothers will take care of that. Then what? Then you'll see the world as it is. Infinite, said Jace with a dry smile. Don't quote Blake at me. The smile turned less dry. I didn't think you'd recognize it. You don't strike me as one who reads a lot of poetry. Everyone knows that quote because of the Doors. Jace looked at her blankly. The Doors? They were... Jace looked at her blankly. The Doors. They were a band. If you say so, he said. I suppose you don't have much time for enjoying music, Clary said, thinking of Simon, for whom music was his entire life in your line of work. He shrugged. Maybe the occasional wailing chorus of the Damned. That's always nice. Claire looked at him quickly to see if he was joking, but he was expressionless. But you were playing the piano yesterday, she began, at the institute, so you must... The carriage lurched upward again. Claire grabbed at the edge of her seat and stared. They were rolling along the top of a downtown M1 bus. From this vantage point, she could see the upper floors of the old apartment buildings that lined the avenue. Elaborately carved with gargoyles and ornamental cornices. Sorry for that little voice change. I did that on purpose, by the way. You sound strict, your father. Joyce's tone was sharp. Not at all. He indulged me. He taught me Wait, what? I skipped a few lines. What the fuck? Okay, so, and ornamental cornices. I was just messing around, said Jace, without looking at her. My father insisted I learned to play an instrument. He sounds strict, your father. Jace's tone was sharp. Not at all. He indulged me. He taught me everything. Weapons training, demonology, arcane lore, ancient languages. He gave me anything I wanted. Horses, weapons, books, even a hunting falcon. But weapons and books aren't exactly what most kids want for Christmas, Clary thought as the carriage slumped back down to the pavement. Now, I beg to differ. Okay, not the weapons thing, but the books. The kid, I read, and I still read and read. My favorite place to go in school was always the library. I read almost every book in the library, except Harry Potter. Except for the Harry Potter series, I just didn't read it. Okay. Why didn't you mention to Hodge that you knew the men that Luke was talking to? That they were the ones who killed your dad? Jace looked down at his hands. They were slim and careful hands. The hands of an artist, not a warrior. The ring she had noticed earlier flashed on his finger. She would have thought there would have been something feminine about a boy wearing a ring, but there wasn't. The ring itself was solid and heavy-looking, made of a dark brown-looking silver of a pattern of stars. Around the band, a burned-looking silver, like a pattern of stars around the band. The letter W was carved into it. Because if I did, he said, he'd know I wanted to kill Valentine myself, and he'd never let me try. Well, it would be wise. You mean you want to kill him for revenge? For justice, said Jace. I never knew who killed my father. Now I do. This is my chance to make it right. Still. Claire didn't see how killing one person could make right the death of another, but she sensed there was no point saying that. But you knew who killed him, she said. It was those men. You said Jace wasn't looking at her, so Claire let her voice trail off. They were rolling through Astor Place now, narrowly dodging a purple New York City University tram as it cut through traffic. Passing pedestrians looked crushed by the heavy air like insects pinned under glass. Some groups of homeless kids were crowded around the base of a big brass statue. Folded cardboard signs asking for money propped up in front of them. God damn it. Clary saw a girl about her own age with a smoothly shaved bald head leaning against a brown-skinned boy with dreadlocks. His face adorned with a dozen piercings. He turned his head as the carriage rolled by as if he could see it. She caught the gleam of his eye. One of them was clouded, as though he had no pupil. Part fairy, I'm guessing? I'm guessing that guy's barbarian. I was 10, Jace said. She turned to look at him. He was without expression. It seemed like some color drained out of him when he talked about his father. We lived in a manor house out in the country. My father always said it was safer away from people. I heard them coming up the drive and went to tell him. He told me to hide, so I hid under the stairs. I saw those men come in. They had others with them. Not men, forsaken. They overpowered my father and cut his throat. The blood ran across the floor. It soaked my shoes. I didn't move. It took a moment for Clary to realize he was done speaking, and another to find her voice. I'm so sorry, Jace. I'm sorry, too. His eyes gleamed in the darkness. I don't understand why mundanes always apologize for things that aren't their fault. I'm not apologizing. It's a way of empathizing, of saying that I'm sorry you're unhappy. I'm not unhappy, he said. Only people with no purpose are unhappy. I've got a purpose. You mean killing demons or getting revenge for your father's death? Both. Would your father really want you to kill those men just for revenge? A shadow hunter who kills another shadow hunter, another of his brothers, is worse than a demon. And should be put down like one. Jace said, sounding as if he were reciting the words from a textbook. But are all demons evil, she said? I mean, if all vampires aren't evil and all werewolves aren't evil, Maybe Jace turned on her, looking exasperated. It's not the same thing at all. Vampires, werewolves, even warlocks are part human, part of this world, born in it. They belong here, but demons come from other worlds. They are interdimensional parasites. They come to a world and use it up. They can't build, just destroy. They can't make, only use. They drain a place to ashes, and when it's dead, they move on to the next one. It's life they want, not just your life or mine, but all the life of this world. It's rivers and cities, it's oceans, it's everything. And the only thing that stands between them and destruction of all this, he pointed outside the window of the carriage, waving his hand as if he meant to indicate everything in the city, from the skyscrapers uptown to the clog of traffic in Houston Street, is the Nephilim. Yes, that gives you perspective. Oh, Claire said, there didn't seem to be much else to say. How many other worlds are there? No one knows. Hundreds? Millions, maybe? And they're all dead worlds? Used up? Claire felt her stomach drop, though it might have been only the jolt as they rolled up and over a purple mini. That seems so sad. I didn't say that the dark orange light of the city haze spilled in through the windows, outlining his sharp profile. There are probably other living worlds like ours, but only demons can travel between them, because they're mostly non-corporeal, partly, but nobody knows exactly why. Plenty of warlocks have tried it, and it never worked. Nothing from Earth can pass through the wardings between the worlds. If we could, he added, we might be able to block them from the... Okay guys, back. I hope you did not hear that confused call I just got. Someone called me. I was confused. And they said you called me, and I'm like, no, I didn't. It was so confusing. Well, anyways, let's get back. Oh, so go to... I didn't say that. The dark orange light of city haze spilled in through the window, outlining his sharp profile. There are probably other living worlds like ours, but only demons can travel between them, because they're mostly non-corporeal. Partly, but nobody knows exactly why. Plenty of warlocks have tried it, and it's never worked. Nothing from Earth can pass through the wardings between the worlds. If we could, he added, we might be able to block them from coming here. But nobody's even been able to figure out how to do that. In fact, more and more of them are coming through. There used to be only small demon invasions into this world, easily contained. But even in my lifetime, more and more of them have spilled in through the wardings. The Clave is always having to dispatch shadow hunters, and a lot of times they don't come back. But if you had the Mortal Cup, you could make more, right? More demon hunters? Claire asked tentatively. Sure, said Jace, but we haven't had the cup for years now, and a lot of us die young. So our numbers slowly dwindle. Now this thing Claire's gonna say is gonna make me burst out laughing. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try and hold it back. Aren't you, Claire searched for the right word, reproducing? I'm sorry guys, that just gets me every time. It gets me every time. I'm gonna press pause on the recording until I don't have... I'm gonna press pause on the recording until I get done with this laughing. Okay, I'm back. I've only been off for like a minute, and I'm still laughing, as you can probably tell. But I'm gonna try and read that line more seriously. Aren't you, Clary searched for the right word, reproducing? Jace burst out laughing just as the carriage made a sudden sharp left turn. He braced himself, but Clary was thrown against him. He caught her hands holding her lightly but firmly away from him. She felt the cool impress of his ring like a sliver of ice against her sweaty skin. Sure, he said, we love reproducing. It's one of our favorite things. Oh my god. That. Most of you will probably be laughing with me. Clary pulled away from him, her face burning in the darkness, and turned to look out the window. They were rolling toward a heavy wrought iron gate, trellised with dark vines. We're here, announced Jace as the smooth roll of wheels over pavement turned to the jumps of cobblestones. Claire glimpsed words across the arch as they rolled under it. New York City Marble Cemetery. But they stopped burying people in Manhattan a century ago because they ran out of room, didn't they? She said. They were moving down a narrow alley with the high stone walls on either side. The Bone City has been here longer than that. The carriage came to a shuddering halt. Clary jumped as Jace stretched his arm out, but he was only reaching past her to open the door on her side. His arm was lightly muscled and downed with golden hairs, fine as pollen. You don't get a choice, do you? She asked. About being a shadow hunter. You can't just opt out. Not easily or without risk, he said, and the door swung open, letting in a blast of muggy air. The carriage had drawn to a stop on a wide square of green grass surrounded by mossy marble walls. But if I had a choice, this is still what I'd choose. Why? She asked. He raised an eyebrow which made Clary instantly jealous. She'd always wanted to be able to do that. Really? I don't know if I can do it, but it feels like I can. I don't know. Because, he said, it's what I'm good at. He jumped down from the carriage. Clary slid to the edge of her seat, dangling her legs. It was a long drop to the cobblestones, especially for someone so short. She jumped. The impact stung her feet, but she didn't fall. She swung around in triumph to find Jace watching her. I would have helped you down, he said. She blinked. It's okay. You didn't have to. He glanced behind him. Brother Jeremiah was descending from his perch behind the horses in a silent fall of robes. He cast no shadow on the sun-baked grass. Come, he said, gliding away from the carriage and the comforting lights of 2nd Avenue moving toward the dark center of the garden. It was clear that he expected them to follow. The grass was dry, crackling underfoot, the marble walls to either side smooth and pearly. There were names carved into the stone of the walls, names and dates. It took Clary a moment to realize that they were grave markers. A chill scraped up her spine. Where were the bodies? In the walls, buried upright as if they'd been walled in alive? She had forgotten to look where she was going when she collided with something unmistakably alive. She yelped out loud. It was Jace. Don't screech like that. You'll wake the dead. She frowned at him. Why are we stopping? He pointed at Brother Jeremiah, who had come to a halt. in front of a statue just slightly taller than he was. Its base overgrown with moss, the statue was of an angel. The marble of the statue was so smooth it was almost translucent. The face of the angel was fierce and beautiful and sad. In long white hands the angel held a cup, its rim studded with marble jewels. Something but the statue tickled Clary's memory with an uneasy familiarity. There was a date inscribed on the base, 1234, and words inscribed around it, Nephilim Facilis Descensus Averni. Is that meant to be the mortal cup? She asked. Jace nodded, and that's the motto of the Nephilim, the Shadow Hunters, there on the base. What does it mean? Jace's grin was a white flash in the darkness. It means Shadow Hunters, looking better in black than widows and her enemies since 1234. Jace, it means, said Jeremiah, the descent into hell is easy. Actually, it is when you think about it. When you actually think about it, it's easy. Nice and cheery, said Clary, but a shiver passed over her skin despite the heat. It's the brother's little joke, having that here, said Jace. You'll see. Are you sure? She looked at Brother Jeremiah. He had drawn a steel faintly glowing from some inner pocket of his robe, and with the tip he traced the pattern of a rune on the statue's base. The mouth of the stone angel suddenly gaped wide in a silent scream, and a yawning black hole opened in the grassy turf at Jeremiah's feet. It looked like an open grave. Slowly Clary approached the edge of it and peered inside. A set of granite steps led down into the hole, their edges worn soft by years of use. Torches were set along the steps at intervals, flaring hot green, icy blue. The bottom of the stairs was lost in darkness. Jace took the stairs with the ease of someone who finds a situation familiar, if not exactly comfortable. Halfway to the first torch, he paused and looked up at her. "Come on," he said impatiently. Clary had barely set her foot on the first step when she felt her arm caught in a cold grip. She looked up in astonishment. Brother Jeremiah was holding her wrist, his icy white fingers digging into the skin. She could see the bony gleam of his scarred face beneath the edge of his cowl. "Do not fear," said his voice inside her head. "It would take more than a single human cry to wake these dead." It'd take a lot more than a friggin' human cry. My God. When he released her arm, she skittered down the stairs after Jace, her heart pounding against her ribs. He was waiting for her at the foot of the steps. He'd taken one of the green burning torches out of its bracket and was holding it at eye level. It lent a pale green cast to his skin. "You all right?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The stairs ended in a shallow landing. Ahead of them stretched a tunnel, long and black, ridged with the curling roots of trees. A faint bluish light was visible at the tunnel's end. "It's so dark," she said lamely. You want me to hold your hand?" Clary put both her hands behind her back like a small child. "Don't talk down to me." "Well, I could hardly talk up to you. You're too short." Jace glanced past her, the torch showering sparks as he moved. "No need to stand on ceremony, Brother Jeremiah," he drawled. "Lead on. We'll be right behind you." Clary jumped. She still wasn't used to the archivist's silent comings and goings. He moved noiselessly from where he had been standing behind her and headed into the tunnel. After a moment she followed, knocking Jason's outstretched hand aside as she went. Yes. So we're now on page 180. Just not even 8 pages to go because it's just like 4 lines of page 180 left. Oh my god. Which is good because I'm starting to run out of time. I have 29 minutes of recording time left on my phone. So, let's get on with this. Hope I can get through 8 pages in that little time and talk about things. Yeah. Clary's first sight of the Silent City was a row upon row of tall marble arches that rose overhead, disappearing into the distance like the orderly rows of trees in an orchard. The marble itself was a pure, ashy ivory, hard and polished looking, and set in places with narrow strips of onyx, jasper, and jade. As they moved away from the tunnel and toward the forest of arches, Clary saw that the floor was inscribed with the same runes that sometimes decorated Jace's skin, with lines and whorls and swirling patterns. As the three of them passed through the first arch, something large and white loomed up on her left side, like an iceberg of the bow of the Titanic. It was a block of white stone, smooth and square, with a sort of door inset into the front. It reminded her of a child-sized playhouse, almost, but not quite big enough for her to stand up inside in. "It's a mausoleum," said Jace, directing a flash of torchlight at it. Clary could see that a rune was carved into the door, which was sealed shut with bolts of iron. "A tomb. We bury our dead here." "All your dead?" she said, half wanting to ask him if his father was buried here, but he had already moved ahead, out of earshot. She hurried after him, not wanting to be alone with Brother Jeremiah in this spooky place. "I thought you said this was a library." "There are many levels to the Silent City," interjected Jeremiah, "and not all the dead are buried here. There is another ossuary in Idris, of course, much larger. But on this level are the mausoleums, and the place of burning." "The place of burning?" "Those who die in battle are burned, their ashes used to make the marble arches that you see here. The blood and bone of demon slayers is itself a powerful protection against evil. Even in death, the clave serves the cause." How exhausting, Clary thought, to fight all your life and then be expected to continue that fight, even when your life was over. At the edges of her vision, she could see the square white vaults rising on either side of her in orderly rows of tombs, each door locked from the outside. She understood now why this was called the Silent City. Its only inhabitants were the mute brothers and the dead they so zealously guarded. Yes. They had reached another staircase, leading down into more twilight. Jace thrust the torch ahead of him, streaking the walls with shadows. "We're going to the second level, where the archives and council rooms are," he said, as if to reassure her. "Where are the living quarters?" Clary asked, partly to be polite, partly out of real curiosity. "Where do the brothers sleep?" "Sleep?" "Sleep?" The silent word hung in the darkness between them. Jace laughed, and the flame of the torch he held flickered. "You had to ask." So by that comment, not entirely sure still, but I guess that the Silent Brothers don't sleep. It's just a guess, by the way. I don't really know. You had to ask though. At the foot of the stairs was another tunnel which widened out at the end in a square pavilion, each corner of which was marked by a spire of carved bone, torches burning in long onyx holders along the sides of the square, and the air smelled of ashes and smoke. In the center of the pavilion was a long table of black basalt veined in white. Behind the table, against the dark wall, hung an enormous silver sword, point down, its hilt carved in the shape of outspread wings. Seated at the table was a row of Silent Brothers, each wrapped and cowled in the same parchment-colored robes as Jeremiah. Jeremiah wasted no time. "We have arrived, Clarissa. Stand before the council." Clary glanced at Jace, but he was blinking, clearly confused. Brother Jeremiah must have spoken only inside her head. She looked at the table, at the long row of silent figures muffled in their heavy robes. Alternating squares made up the pavilion floor, golden bronze and a darker red. Just in front of the table was a larger square, made of white marble embossed with a parabolic design of silver stars. Clary stepped into the center of the black square as if she were stepping in front of a firing squad. Ooh. She raised her hand. "All right," she said. "Now what?" The brothers made a sound then, a sound that raised the hairs up all along Clary's neck and the backs of her arms. It was a sound like a sigh or a groan. In unison, they raised their hands and pushed their cowls back, baring their scarred faces and the pits of their empty eyes. Though she had seen Brother Jeremiah's uncovered face already, Clary's stomach knotted. It was like looking at a row of skeletons, like one of those medieval woodcuts where the dead walked and talked and danced on the piled bodies of the living. Their stitched mouths seemed to grin at her. It almost seems impossible, but it's not, guys. The council greets you. The council greets you, Clarissa Frey. She heard, and it was not just one silent voice inside her head, but a dozen. Some low and rough, some smooth and monotone, but all were demanding, insistent, pushing at the fragile barriers around her mind. "Stop," she said, and to her astonishment her voice came out firm and strong. The din inside her mind ceased as suddenly as a record that had stopped spinning. "You can go inside my head," she said, "but only when I'm ready. If you do not want our help, there is no need for this. You are the one who asked for our assistance, after all. You want to know what's in my mind, just like I do," she said. "That doesn't mean you can't be careful about it." The brother who sat in the center seat templed his thin white fingers beneath his chin. "It is an interesting puzzle, admittedly," he said, and the voice inside her mind was dry and neutral. "But there is no need for the use of force if you do not resist." She gritted her teeth. She wanted to resist them, wanted to pry those intrusive voices out of her head, to stand by and allow such a violation of her most intimate, personal self. But there was every chance that had already happened. But there was every chance that had already happened, she reminded herself. This was nothing more than the excavation of a past crime, the theft of her memory. If it worked, what had been taken from her would be restored. She closed her eyes. "Go ahead," she said. The first contact came as a whisper inside her head, delicate as the brush of a falling leaf. State your name for the consul." "Clarissa Frey." The first voice joined by others. "Who are you?" "I'm Clary Jocelyn." "I'm Clary. My mother is Jocelyn Frey. I live at 807 Berkeley Place in Brooklyn. I am 15 years old. My father's name was—" Her mind seemed to snap in on itself like a rubber band, and she reeled soundlessly into a whirlwind of images cast against the inside of her closed eyelids. Her mother was hurrying her down a night black street between piles of heaped and dirty snow, then a lowering sky, gray and leaden, rose-black trees stripped bare, an empty square cut into the earth, a plain coffin lowered into it. Ashes to ashes, Jocelyn wrapped in her patchwork quilt, tears spilling down her cheeks, quickly closing a box and shoving it under a cushion as Clary came into the room. She saw the initials on the box again. JC. The images came faster now, like the pages of one of those books where the drawings seem to move when you flip them. Clary stood on top of a flight of stairs, looking down a narrow corridor, and there was Luke again, his green duffel bag at his feet. Jocelyn stood in front of him, shaking her head. "Why now, Lucian? I thought you were dead." Clary blinked. Luke looked different, almost a stranger, bearded, his hair long and tangled, and branches came down to block her view. She was in the park again, and green fairies, tiny as toothpicks, buzzed among the red flowers. She reached for one in delight, and her mother swung her up into her arms with a cry of terror. Then it was winter on the black street again, and they were hurrying, huddled under an umbrella. Jocelyn half pushing and half dragging Clary between the looming banks of snow. A granite doorway loomed up out of the falling whiteness. There were words carved above the door, "The Magnificent." Then she was standing inside an entryway that smelled of iron and melting snow. Her fingers were numb with cold. A hand under her chin directed her to look up, and she saw a row of words scrawled along the wall. 2 words leaped out at her, burning into her eyes. "Magnus Bane!" A sudden pain lanced through her right arm. She shrieked as the images fell away, and she spun upward, breaking the surface of consciousness. Like a diver breaking up through a wave, there was something cold pressed against her cheek. She pried her eyes open and saw silver stars. She blinked twice before she realized she was lying on the marble floor, her knees curled up to her chest. When she moved, hot pain shot up her arm. She sat up gingerly, the skin over her left elbow was split and bleeding. She must have landed on it when she fell. There was blood on her shirt. She looked around, disoriented, and saw Jace looking at her, unmoving but very tense around the mouth. "We're almost done, guys. Just 3 more pages." Magnus Bane. The words meant something, but what? Before she could ask the question aloud, Brother Jeremiah interrupted her. The block inside your mind is stronger than we had anticipated," he said. It can be safely undone only by the one who put it there. For us to remove it would be to kill you." She scrambled to her feet, cradling her injured arm. "But I don't know who put it there. If I knew that, I wouldn't have come here. The answer to that is woven into the thread of your throat." The answer to that is woven into the thread of your thoughts, said Brother Jeremiah. In your waking dream you saw it written. Magnus Bane. But that's not even a name. Yes, it is. It is enough. Brother Jeremiah got to his feet as if this were a signal. The rest of the brothers rose alongside him. They inclined their heads toward Jace, a gesture of silent acknowledgement, before they filed away among the pillars and were gone. Only Brother Jeremiah remained. He watched impassively as Jace hurried over to Clary. Is your arm all right? Let me see, he demanded, seizing her wrist. Ouch! It's fine, don't do that, you're making it worse, Clary said, trying to pull away. You bled on the speaking stars, he said, looking. Well, Clary looked and saw that he was right. There was a smear of her blood on the white and silver marble. I bet there's a law somewhere about that. He turned her arm over more gently than she would have thought he was capable of. He caught his lower lip between his teeth and whistled. She glanced down and saw that a glove of blood covered her lower arm from the elbow to the wrist. The arm was throbbing, stiff and painful. Is this when you start tearing strips of your t-shirt to bind up my wounds? She joked. She hated the sight of blood, especially her own. If you wanted me to rip my clothes off, you should have just asked. He dug into his pocket and brought out his steel. It would have been a lot less painful. Remembering the stinging sensation when the steel had touched her wrist, she braced herself, but all she felt was the glowing instrument glided lightly over her injury with a faint warmth. There, he said, straightening up. Clary flexed her arm in wonder. Though the blood was still there, the wound was gone, and as the pain and stiffness. And next time you're planning to injure yourself to get my attention, just remember a little sweet talk works wonders. Jace, you're so full of yourself. And you're gonna just hear me say that a lot. Clary felt her mouth twitch into a smile. I'll keep that in mind, she said, and as he turned away, she added, and thanks. He slid the steel into his back pocket without turning to look at her, but she thought she saw a certain gratification in his sigh instead of his shoulders. Brother Jeremiah, he said, rubbing his hands together, you've been very quiet all this time. Surely you have some thoughts you'd like to share? I am charged with leading you from the Silent City, and that is all, said the archivist. Clary wondered if she were imagining it, or if there was actually a faintly affronted tone to his voice. We could always show ourselves out, Jay suggested hopefully. I'm sure I remember the way. The marvels of the Silent City are not for the eyes of the uninitiated, said Jeremiah. He turned his back on them with the soundless swish of robes. This way. When they emerged into the open, Clary took deep breaths of the thick morning air, relishing the city stench of smog, dirt, and humanity. Jace looked around thoughtfully. It's going to rain, he said. He was right, Clary thought, looking up at the iron-gray sky. Are we taking a carriage back to the Institute? Jace looked from Brother Jeremiah, still as a statue, to the carriage looming like a black shadow in the archway that led to the street. Then he broke into a grin. No way, he said. I hate those things. Let's hail a cab. And that is chapter 10. Oh my god. I have 10 minutes to talk to you guys. Okay. Oh my god. Well, that was chapter 10. We finally discovered who put the block on Claire's mind. Magnus Dane, the warlock. I will not tell you how powerful he is, but still. Yeah, so I guess That's all I really have to say. Bye, I guess. Not really much for me to say. Just bye. I should stop talking. So, bye. I'm done.